Ever walk out of a store without buying anything and feel like security is about to tackle you? Or maybe you've recorded the phone conversation and spent the next hour wondering if the FBI is tracking your location. Maybe you've driven around in your birthday suit just for fun. We've all done something completely innocent that somehow makes us feel like we're one step away from starring in our own crime documentary. I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 things that are perfectly legal, but feel criminal. But before we begin, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content. With that being said, let's go. Because, doing all that stuff, totally illegal, so you should do it. 25. Having a monkey as a pet feels like you're running some kind of underground exotic animal operation, doesn't it? There's something about walking a capuchin down the street that screams, I'm definitely breaking at least 17 laws right now. The truth is, it's not universally illegal, though it probably should make you feel a little guilty given how complicated monkey ownership really is. The legal landscape is surprisingly patchy. Places like Alabama, Arkansas, and South Carolina basically shrug their shoulders and say, go for it. While places like California and New York slam the door shut completely. It's the kind of legal lottery that makes you wonder if lawmakers just threw darts at a map. If you live in a no state and just so happen to want to move abroad, the UK has you covered. Kind of. You can technically get a dangerous wild animals license to keep a monkey, though the paperwork probably takes longer than training the monkey itself. And if you're in Thailand or Indonesia, typically you're good to go. In Canada, it's banned everywhere except good old Ontario. But here's where that criminal feeling makes perfect sense. Even when it's legal, monkey ownership comes with a mountain of ethical baggage. These aren't dogs that evolved alongside humans for thousands of years. They're wild creatures with complex social needs, special diets, and the strength to redecorate your living room in ways you never imagined. So while you might not be breaking human laws, you're definitely bending some laws of common sense. 24. Recording a conversation. Recording a conversation is kind of like channeling your inner spy, isn't it? There's something deeply sneaky about hitting that record button during a phone call or face-to-face chat that makes you feel like you should be wearing dark sunglasses and speaking in code names. Your brain immediately starts whispering, this has got to be illegal, even when you're just trying to remember what your mom said about Thanksgiving dinner plans. The reality is way more nuanced than your guilty conscience suggests. Here in the US, it's actually a state-by-state situation that's more confusing than trying to figure out daylight savings time. Some states follow one-party consent laws, which means that as long as you're part of the conversation, you can record without telling anyone. States like New York, Texas, and Georgia basically say, if you're talking, you can tape. But then you've got two-party consent states like California, Florida, and Pennsylvania that require everyone involved to know they're being recorded, or you could find yourself facing actual wiretapping charges. The tricky part is that this patchwork of laws means what's perfectly legal in Ohio could land you in hot water in Illinois. That criminal feeling? Sometimes it's your brain doing you a solid by keeping you in check. But depending on where you are, you can just ignore it and hit record. 23. Performing surgery without a good night's sleep. Performing surgery after pulling an all-nighter should come with flashing warning lights and maybe a few concerned relatives staging an intervention. When you think about someone wielding a scalpel on 3 hours of sleep, your brain immediately goes, well, that can't possibly be legal, right? You'd assume there'd be some kind of federal law requiring surgeons to clock in a solid 8 hours before they start rearranging people's internal organs. But surprisingly, there's absolutely no legal requirement for surgeons to get adequate sleep before operating. The responsibility falls entirely on the individual doctor and whatever scheduling policies their hospital decides to implement, which is about as reassuring as it sounds. We have strict rules about how many hours truck drivers can be on the road without rest, but the person performing your appendectomy, they could theoretically be running on nothing but coffee and determination. The medical community knows this is a problem too. In fact, studies do show that sleep-deprived surgeons have slower reaction times, impaired judgment, and higher error rates. Some hospitals have implemented fatigue management programs, but it's more of a voluntary best practice and not a legal mandate. Unethical? Sure, maybe. Illegal? Not at all. So while that queasy feeling about exhausted surgeons makes perfect sense, technically, they're not breaking any laws by operating on fumes. 22. Driving while drowsy. Driving while you can barely keep your eyes open is like operating a 2-ton missile with your brain running on standby mode. Every time you catch yourself nodding off at a red light or drifting between lanes, there's this voice in your head screaming, "This has got to be illegal." You'd think something so obviously dangerous would have lawmakers writing tickets left and right, especially when almost all of us know that friend who's fallen asleep behind the wheel at least once. Surprisingly, there's no specific law that says you can't drive while exhausted, at least in most states. Unlike drunk driving or texting behind the wheel, drowsy driving exists in this weird legal gray area where it's clearly dangerous, but not technically prohibited. You won't get pulled over for yawning too much or having heavy eyelids, even though studies show that being awake for 18 hours straight affects your driving about as much as having a blood alcohol level of 0.08. The catch comes when things go wrong. If your drowsy driving causes an accident, suddenly you're looking at potential charges for reckless or negligent driving. Insurance companies aren't exactly sympathetic either, and proving you weren't at fault becomes a lot harder when you have to admit you were fighting to stay conscious. Should you drive tired? No. Grab a coffee or take a car nap. But is it legal as long as you make it home without an accident? Yep. 21. Sleeping in your car. Let's say you do need that cat nap before hitting the road. Don't worry, it's also legal to sleep in your car. While it might feel like you're one step away from having a flashlight tapped on your window and a very uncomfortable conversation with a cop, it usually won't go that way. You're more likely to get a sore back and cramped legs. The reality is, sleeping in your car is generally legal as long as you're parked somewhere you're allowed to be. That's the tricky part. Watch for overnight restrictions, weather changes, and rest area hours. Also, steer clear of private properties because they will absolutely tell you to move along. When in doubt, choose Walmart. The company has become absolutely legendary for being traveler friendly, and most of their parking lots are fair game. And if you do get that dreaded knock on the door with flashing lights, stay calm and explain you're just trying to get in 40 winks because isn't that better than hitting the road when you're too tired to function? 20. Driving naked. Driving naked feels like the kind of thing that would immediately result in a high-speed chase, helicopter news coverage, and your mugshot becoming the internet meme for all the wrong reasons. Most people assume there's probably a specific law against operating a motor vehicle while completely au naturel, especially given how many weird driving laws seem to exist. You'd think somewhere between don't text and drive and keep your hands on the wheel, someone would have mentioned keeping your clothes on too. But shockingly, driving in your birthday suit isn't actually illegal in most places. At least, not by itself. The laws that could get you in trouble typically focus on indecent exposure or public lewdness, which usually require you to intentionally shock or offend other people. If you're alone in your car with tinted windows and nobody can see you, most jurisdictions basically treat it like driving in your pajamas. Weird, but not criminal. Of course, this all falls apart the second you need to interact with the world outside of your car. Pull up to a drive-thru window or have a breakdown on the highway, and you're suddenly facing a very different conversation with very different people. Nobody wants to explain to a tow truck driver why they need 5 minutes to get dressed before stepping out of their vehicle. 19. Removing that mattress tag. This is one of those quandaries that has stumped way too many people for way too long. Can you remove that tag from your mattress? Just the thought of doing it feels like you're about to trigger some kind of federal manhunt, doesn't it? That ominous "do not remove under penalty of law" warning has been terrorizing homeowners for decades, making people treat those little white tags like they're defusing a bomb. There's something deeply unsettling about the official government language that makes you wonder if the mattress police are going to show up at your door the second you reach for the scissors. But that criminal feeling is completely misplaced, because the law doesn't apply to you at all. Those stern warnings are aimed at manufacturers and retailers, not the person who actually bought the mattress and has to sleep on it every night. Rest easy, friends. You can rip that tag off with zero legal consequences. You could frame it, burn it, or use it as a bookmark if you wanted to. The only real penalty is losing the care instructions, which means you'll be guessing whether your mattress can handle that coffee spill. 18. Drinking booze. even if you're underage. Cracking open a cold one before your 21st birthday feels like you're starring in your own personal episode of America's Most Wanted, doesn't it? Every sip feels like you're committing some kind of federal crime that's going to follow you around forever. The whole 21 and over thing, at least here in the US, is drilled into everyone so hard that some people assume getting caught with a beer at 20 is basically the same as robbing a bank. The reality is way more complicated. Obviously, underage drinking is not encouraged, but many states treat it more like a traffic ticket than a criminal offense. Some places hit you with fines and mandatory alcohol education classes rather than jail time or permanent criminal records. The legal system focuses more on going after adults who provide the alcohol to minors rather than punishing the kids who drank it. Does that mean you're completely off the hook? Not really. Getting caught means you'll have to deal with your parents or your school or your super nosy opinionated aunt who's going to give you the lecture of a lifetime. While that paranoid feeling about underage drinking might be a bit overblown, your instincts about avoiding trouble probably aren't wrong either. 17. Backyard burials. Burying someone in your backyard feels like the opening scene of every crime drama ever made. There's something deeply suspicious about digging holes in your own yard that makes neighbors start whispering and local authorities start asking questions. Most people automatically assume this has got to be illegal because, well, it sounds like something only serial killers and people with very complicated family dynamics would consider doing. But surprisingly, backyard burials aren't automatically against the law in many places, though they definitely aren't as simple as grabbing a shovel and calling it a day. Before you hire a backhoe, check in with your local government. Most places have incredibly specific rules about how deep you can dig, how far from a water source you need to be, and even about acceptable soil conditions. So, while you can bury the body, you need to head to City Hall first. The paperwork alone is enough to make most people reconsider the whole idea. You're dealing with permits, inspections, and documentation requirements that make filing taxes look like a fun weekend activity. 16. Marrying your cousin. Break out your banjos because this one is a one-way ticket to becoming the subject of every family reunion for the next 3 generations. I'm talking about how it's totally legal to turn that family tree into a family wreath by marrying your cousin. Yes. Oh yes. Kissing cousins is actually legal in about half of the United States. Yes, you can absolutely make this questionable life choice in places like here in Florida, California, and New York. Ironically, Sweet Home Alabama isn't the theme song for this since it's completely banned there. Will some states make you do genetic testing first? Sure. Will others stop you until you're beyond childbearing age? Sometimes. But hey, if you love your cousin, just move states and kiss away. And no, the US isn't the only place you can love up your cousin. It's actually surprisingly common globally, with some cultures even encouraging it, especially when they want to keep poor people out of their bloodlines. Legal? Yes. Immoral? That depends on who you ask. Worthy of someone coming up to you and having a serious conversation about expanding your social circle? You bet. 15. Spanking at home. Spanking your kids at home feels like you're one nosy neighbor away from having Child Protective Services knocking on your door with a very serious clipboard and even more serious questions. Well, Nosy Nancy can go poke her nose somewhere else though, because what you're doing might look like child brutality to her, but the law sees it differently. The reality is that spanking at home isn't automatically illegal in most places, as long as you're not crossing into abuse territory. Most states allow what they call reasonable physical discipline, which basically means you can spank your child as long as you're not causing injury, using objects, or doing it out of anger. Don't think this is a free pass to wallop your little one, though. The legal line usually gets drawn somewhere between a quick swat on the bottom and anything that leaves marks or involves implements that would make medieval torture devices seem reasonable. And remember, reasonable means different things in different places, and there's a whole lot of gray area here. So while swatting a mouthy kid on the bottom may not land you in prison blues, it's not exactly something you should be bragging about. Were you ever spanked as a kid? Let me know in the comments below. I never was. 14. Baby walkers. Baby walkers should definitely come with a warning label that reads, "Caution, may turn your infant into a tiny speed demon with zero understanding of stairs." There's something kind of fun and a tiny bit unsettling about strapping a baby who can't even walk into a wheeled contraption and then letting them zoom around the house like they're training for the Indy 500. But every parent who's ever watched their baby barrel toward the top of the staircase in one of those things has wondered how these death traps are even legal. But legally, they are. At least in the USA, despite safety experts like the American Academy of Pediatrics treating them like tiny vehicles of doom. Not only can they delay walking development, but there's a serious increased risk of injuries, especially in houses with stairs. While it's hilarious to be chased down by a racing rascal and it's perfectly legal, you may want to think twice about turning your living room into a tiny racetrack. 13. Foods containing arsenic. Lucky number 13, where we discovered that your kitchen pantry is basically stocked like a Victorian poison cabinet. Who knew that making dinner could feel like you're channeling your inner evil stepmother from a fairy tale? Just the mere idea of eating foods with arsenic feels like you should be hiring a food taster, updating your will, and maybe practicing some dramatic death scenes just in case. There's something wild about realizing that the same stuff used to bump off annoying husbands in murder mysteries is just casually seasoning your Tuesday night stir fry. Stir Friday. Should be a Friday. But plot twist, arsenic is naturally occurring, which means Mother Nature has been trying to poison us long before any scheming relatives got creative with the family recipe. The FDA doesn't ban arsenic in food because that would be like banning dirt from existing. Instead, they play this fun game of how much poison is too much poison? It's a fine balance between you being okay and you calling an ambulance. Rice is the real overachiever here, soaking up arsenic from soil like it's trying to win some kind of toxic absorption contest. You can rinse it all you want, but rice is committed to bringing a little danger to your dinner table. So while that paranoid feeling about accidentally poisoning yourself with leftovers makes perfect sense, at least you can tell people you're living dangerously every time you make yourself some beans and rice. 12. Fat-free chips made with Olestra. You've seen them. You've probably eaten them. And you may have even liked them. I'm talking about, of course, those delicious fat-free chips that promise to keep your waistline in check, even if you gorge on an entire bag. You may want to take a gander at the label, though, because if they're made with Olestra, you're going to want to think twice. There's something rather unsettling about eating a snack that attempts to hack the laws of physics by creating a fat that tastes like fat but passes through your body without being absorbed. Sounds amazing, right? Well, not to your intestines. While the FDA gave Olestra the stamp of approval back in 1996, they already required warning labels about abdominal cramping and loose stools, which is probably the most polite way to describe your stomach declaring war on itself. The wildest part is that these snacks are completely legal to sell in America. Europe? Not so much. They noped out of that one fast. But here in the good old US of A, this synthetic fat substitute has the A-OK. They've made it totally legal for you to discover firsthand why some scientific breakthroughs should have stayed in the lab. 11. Owning other exotic animals. Now, I started this video talking about the legalities of owning monkeys, but what about other exotic pets? While most people assume there have to be some laws to prevent your neighbor, or you, from becoming the next Joe Exotic, it all depends on what state you're in. The legal situation is a bit confusing. Some states like North Carolina, Alabama, and Nevada are totally cool with you owning a tiger because what could possibly go wrong there? While others like California and Hawaii said, nope, exotic pets are where they draw the line. Meanwhile, in other states it can be allowed, but with some seriously heavy paperwork that rivals applying to join the CIA. The wildest part is that you could drive across state lines and go from that's totally fine to you're definitely going to jail faster than you can say emotional support alligator. You can own a leopard in one state, but your friend in another could be arrested for having a pet hedgehog. Before you decide to shop for a new family friend, check the rules, check the laws, and for crying out loud, figure out how to care for them properly. 10. Taking photos of public buildings. There's something about pointing a camera at a courthouse or government building that makes you feel like you're definitely on some kind of watch list. But don't worry, you wouldn't, or at least you shouldn't, get tackled by 3 armed security guards or have your phone confiscated. There are absolutely zero laws against photographing anything that looks remotely official or important. But if you're standing in a public space, you can generally click away at anything in plain view. And not just government buildings either. Police stations and fancy courthouses are also fair game. The logic is pretty simple. If it's visible from a public street, there's no expectation of privacy. So snap away. Restrictions only kick in when you get too creative. Walking onto a military base with your camera or trying to get shots inside secure facilities is a definite no-no. But your average city hall or public library? Totally fine. Just don't expect to get a guided photo tour of the Pentagon anytime soon, and you should be good to go. 9. Not tipping at a restaurant. Rude, but legal. If you live in North America, tipping is a way of life. It's not just encouraged, but expected. In the USA specifically, tipping is so ingrained into our culture that it literally substitutes wages for many waitstaff's salaries, since companies are allowed to severely underpay their servers. While it's polite to tip and a lovely way to make your waiter's day, it's not illegal to walk out without leaving a little extra for your staff. You're only legally required to pay for the food and drinks you've ordered. Does being cheap run you the risk of terrible service and becoming the joke of the break room? Yes. And personally, I'm not about to risk that. The big plot twist, though, is that outside of North America, tipping culture flips on its head. In Japan and South Korea, a tip is considered rude because good service is just expected, not something that deserves extra payment. In much of Europe, you'll find service fee on your bill, so there's no need to throw that cash down on the table. And while you may feel guilty, and honestly in the US you probably should, about not treating your waiter, tipping isn't a legal debate, just a moral one. Although, to be fair, pay your servers. 8. Filming the police in public place. Did you know it's not illegal for you to pull out your phone and film the police in public? Yeah, it's not. Filming in public is a protected right under the First Amendment. The US courts have repeatedly said that citizens have the right to record officers doing their job as long as they're not getting in the way or interfering. Traffic stops, arrests, and general interactions are all fair game, as long as you keep your distance and don't turn into the world's most annoying documentary filmmaker. The key here is staying out of their way while you film. You can't stalk or follow them around like an overeager paparazzi or get too close to the action. If you keep your distance and don't act like you're directing a movie, you have the right to have your phone in your hand. So, while it can be nerve-wracking and they may not like it, you're legally covered as long as you're being smart about it. 7. Paying entirely in coins. Paying for your groceries with a mason jar full of pennies feels like you're about to become the villain in every cashier's horror story. There's something obnoxious about dumping $47.83 worth of loose change onto a counter while a line of increasingly irritated people forms behind you. Most people assume there has to be some kind of law against torturing retail workers with excessive amounts of small change, but coins are legal tender, which means they're technically a valid payment. The US Mint didn't create pennies just for decoration or wishing wells. They're actual money, even if counting out 4,783 of them feels like some kind of medieval torture. Legally speaking, that bucket of quarters you've been saving is just as legitimate as crisp bills. The catch is that private businesses can absolutely refuse your coin collection before any transaction happens. They are not required to accept payment that is unreasonable or disruptive, which means your brilliant plan to pay rent with nickels probably isn't going to fly. Once you already owe them money though, like for a meal you've already eaten, the rules are on your side, which means I'm just gonna go make some payments. I'll be right back. 6. Walking through a drive-thru on foot. Have you ever left the bar at 2 a.m. and really wanted the burger, but the only thing open is a drive-thru, but you're very obviously not driving because you're drunk, right? Yes? Well, don't you worry, because you can totally be that awkward guy who walks through and gets your order. Will the employees start looking for a manager like you just asked him to solve world hunger? Sure, but they'll still hand you your food. While it's not illegal, it is super inconvenient for everyone involved. The only catch here is if the company is smart enough to put up one of those handy-dandy no pedestrian signs. While the policy is there to stop people from being struck down in the lineup, there's nothing legally saying you can't still chance it. But they are under no obligation to actually hand over that Big Mac. 5. Sitting on the floor in an airport. Going to the airport is stressful at best, and what makes it worse is when you get to your gate a little too late to snag a seat. You would think your only option would be to either stand in the middle of the room or lean against the walls because of how high security things are there. Don't fret, friend. You can get off those weary feet and pull up a spot on the floor. While it may feel illegal and even unorthodox, Taking a load off and going all crisscross applesauce isn't wrong at all. It's fair game to claim your square of terminal real estate, especially when you're facing a 6-hour delay. And you may even get a better deal by sacrificing your dignity, because if you get a wall spot, you may even find yourself a plug. And if you're lucky, some have even set up carpeted relaxation zones, which is basically just them admitting the seating situation is truly terrible and their chairs are uncomfortable. The downside? Well, obviously the dirt. The floor is definitely not the cleanest place. 4. Reading books at a bookstore without buying them. This sounds truly unhinged and definitely illegal. But like the others, this is just a life hack for those of us who have the time but not the dimes. If you're sick of waiting for the library's queue for the newest book release, head on over to the bookstore, grab that baby off the shelf and pull up a chair. You can read it right there. It's absolutely not against the law to cheat the system and peruse your favorite author's work cover to cover. The only rules? Don't destroy the book, don't dog-ear the pages, keep those mittens of yours clean, and don't forget you didn't pay for it and then try to take it home. Some stores even lean into this by creating entire sections for you to find a quiet spot to let your imagination run wild. So not only is it legal, but it's encouraged. Although I have noticed a lot of bookstores are taking away their seating areas. 3. Wearing sunglasses indoors. Corey Hart was probably onto something when he became the coolest guy on the planet for wearing his sunglasses at night. Wearing shades indoors may have you looking like you're auditioning for a low-budget action flick, but it's perfectly legal. Whether you're channeling your inner secret agent or just trying to hide the fact that you haven't slept in 2 days, you may get some looks, but you won't end up in cuffs. There are even some totally valid reasons someone would need sunglasses inside. Tired eyes, medical issues, and light sensitivity can sometimes require you to look way cooler than everyone else in the house. The only time you might get in trouble is if someone actually needs to see your face. Casinos, airport security checkpoints, and banks can absolutely ask you to remove them for identification purposes. And if you refuse, well, that's a bigger problem than you bargained for. 2. Writing notes on money, as long as it's still usable. Grabbing a pen and turning a dollar bill into your own personal sticky note seems wrong. Very wrong. Wrong enough that it should have commercials warning people to contact a lawyer and gear up to be charged with destruction of federal property. But is it actually illegal to doodle on George Washington's face or jot down your number on a 20? No. But there is a caveat. You can totally add some artistic flair to Lincoln's beard or stamp your bill with your business info, but only if you do it in a way that keeps the note usable. You're all good as long as that cold hard cash can stay in circulation and not be mutilated to the point of no return. While bank tellers may not love you for handing them bills full of hearts and stars or your flair for the artistry, you won't be facing federal charges or hurting your bank account. So yeah, feel free to turn that currency into a fun little notepad. 1. Window shopping. Our last fun non-crime will have all you mall walkers rejoicing. You love wandering through stores for hours on end, trying on half the inventory, touching everything in sight, and walking out empty-handed? Yeah, me too. Not only can you, but you should. There's nothing legally wrong with spending copious amounts of hours chilling at your favorite Target to check out all the newest trends, or even just standing there watching their TVs. Hey, why pay for cable when you have wall-to-wall videos playing on a loop right there for free? As much as the sales clerk might resent you, it can't really stop you. Sure, they might follow you around to make sure you're not swiping that cashmere sweater you keep fondling, but as long as it doesn't actually end up in your bag, it's all okay. In short, touch, try, admire, and leave without fear. Your marathon shopping session isn't just legal, it's practically a compliment to the store's merchandising skills. Alright, so there you have it. 25 completely legal activities that make you feel like you should be hiring a lawyer and practicing your I plead the fifth speech. Some of this stuff, like driving naked or paying entirely in coins, sounds absolutely unhinged, but the law says you're good to go. Which one shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, you should check out our other one about 25 things that are illegal in the US, but not abroad. I'll link it in the description below, and you should see it pop up here any minute now. Now, for my favorite part of the day, trivia time. Who can answer this legal brain buster without looking it up? That's illegal. Looking it up is totally illegal, trust me. Drop your answers in the comments below. In which US state is it still technically illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket on Sundays? Is it A, Alabama, where this old law was designed to prevent horse theft? B, California, as part of their personal dessert freedom statute? C, Texas, under their individual liberty and frozen treats amendment? Or D, this is actually illegal everywhere due to federal dairy regulations? Until next time, keep doing those perfectly legal things that make you feel like a rebel, because sometimes the best thrills come without any actual consequences. But again, before you go, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss when we drop new content, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Off to do some sketchy legal stuff.